What would you do if your family uninvited you from Christmas without a word, without an explanation, without remorse? Just silence and then pictures. The kind of silence that screams everything they think about you. The kind of betrayal that doesn't punch its slices. At first, Natalie didn't notice the absence. She thought maybe the group chat had gone quiet because everyone was busy, work wrapping gifts the chaos of December. But it was December 23rd, and her phone hadn't buzzed in 2 weeks. No texts, no calls, just stillness. She'd bought gifts, wrapped them in paper she'd chosen just for each person, quirky for her brother, elegant for her mother, minimalistic for her sister-in-law. Each bow tied with care, each card handwritten. They were all stacked by her door, ready for the annual dinner at her mother's house on Christmas Eve. But then her cousin posted a picture on Instagram. The whole family, around the fireplace, matching pajamas, laughter frozen in digital amber, her place on the couch, taken by her brother's golden retriever draped in reindeer antlers. Natalie blinked. At first she thought maybe it was an old photo, but her niece wore the dress Natalie had bought for her this year. The one she picked out during that long phone call in October when she asked, "What's her favorite color now?" Still lilac. No message, no explanation, not even a lie. Just exclusion. Tell me, what kind of woman do you become when the people who should hold you closest decide to pretend you don't exist? She stared at the photo until her face felt numb, until it felt like someone else's family, someone else's loss. But that's the thing, isn't it? Emotional betrayal never screams. It whispers, quietly, cruelly, and always with a smile in a photograph. She could have cried. She could have called her mother and asked why. She could have begged for clarity. She didn't. She made reservations instead. 3 separate ones, 3 different places, 3 people. Each name she typed into the app like a small silent rebellion. Liam, her brother's ex-best friend. Cassie, her cousin's ex-fiancé. Mark, her sister-in-law's ex-husband. You see, Natalie had always been the calm one, the peacemaker, the forgettable peacekeeper, the one who held secrets without ever using them. But something inside her had changed. Not broken, no. Broken means damage. This was sharper. Focused. They didn't invite her to Christmas. Fine, she'd make her own. And she'd spend it with the people her family had tried to erase. You ever wonder what happens to the ones left behind in someone else's family drama? They don't vanish. They wait. They remember. They build new stories out of the old wreckage. So on Christmas Eve, while her mother poured wine into crystal glasses and passed around stuffing, Natalie pulled into a small Italian restaurant 2 towns over. Dim lighting, vinyl booths, Sinatra on a loop. Liam was already there. He stood when she walked in his crooked smile, the same as it had been when they all used to go to the lake house. When he and her brother were inseparable, before the fallout, before her brother married money and dropped every friendship that didn't match his new lifestyle. "You actually came," he said, stunned. "I actually came," she replied, hanging her coat slowly, deliberately. "You don't realize how powerful your presence is until it's the only thing people didn't expect." They talked, they laughed. They remembered the old days. He asked if she knew what happened between him and her brother. She said no, and she didn't care anymore. What mattered was that he remembered her birthday, that he still sent a card every year, even after the family stopped inviting him. The next day she met Cassie at a hotel lounge. Velvet chairs, espresso martinis, eyes lined with a little too much resolve. Cassie, who had once been inches from becoming family, until her cousin cheated on her and said she was too intense. Cassie, who had helped Natalie clean out her childhood bedroom when her mom decided it was time to let go of childish things. "I didn't think you'd ever reach out," Cassie whispered. "Me neither," Natalie admitted. "But you see, abandonment teaches you something rare. Who really sees you? Who sees you when they have nothing to gain?" They stayed for hours, shared memories. Cassie cried a little when Natalie handed her a small box, a silver locket with a photo from that one summer in Tahoe when they all danced under string lights before everything fractured. On Christmas night, she met Mark at a dive bar with sticky counters and the best jukebox in town. Mark, whose only crime had been not being rich enough for her sister-in-law. Mark, who once fixed Natalie's car for free and gave her the name of a therapist when she confessed she'd been feeling invisible. He raised his glass to the forgotten ones. She raised hers to the ones who remember. And there, in the flicker of cheap neon and bittersweet old songs, Natalie found something her family had never given her, a mirror. And for the first time, she liked what she saw. Natalie didn't go home that night. She drove until the highway blurred and the silence became symphonic. The roads were slick with melted frost headlights cutting through the dark like thoughts she couldn't shake. Her phone buzzed once, an automated Christmas text from her bank. Nothing from family, not a single missed call. So she stopped, at a roadside motel with flickering signage and vending machines that still took quarters. Room 207. One lamp, one bed, one reflection in the mirror she couldn't stop staring at. She looked unbothered. That's what unnerved her the most. See, grief doesn't always come crashing in like a tidal wave. Sometimes it's just a quiet rearrangement of your inner furniture. Something's not where it used to be, and maybe it never will be again. You ever realize too late that the loyalty you gave was never reciprocated, that the people you defended in every room never once defended you? That was the taste in her mouth, metallic, not sadness, not even anger, clarity. The kind that arrives late cold and dressed like truth. By the next morning, her body had adjusted to the absence. No gut punch when she scrolled past more photos from the Christmas dinner. Her mother holding court with a glass of wine, her sister-in-law showing off a new bracelet, everyone radiating curated joy. No one even asked where Natalie was. She could have died and no one would have known until the neighbor complained about the smell. And yet, they would have said she always kept to herself. You know that kind of narrative. The quiet girl, the reliable one, the one they never worried about because she was always the one worrying about them. But people forget the quiet ones take notes. Every dismissal, every backhanded compliment, every moment they were talked over, cut off, or accidentally left out. Natalie remembered the time she made Christmas dinner entirely by herself when her mom was sick and everyone acted like it was expected. She remembered how her brother once told her, "You're too sensitive," after their father forgot her birthday. She remembered her niece crying in the hallway at Thanksgiving 2 years ago and how Natalie sat with her while everyone else laughed around the table. None of that mattered now, not to them, but it mattered to her. She checked out of the motel at noon. The clerk didn't even look up from his crossword. She was used to that. But this time, she didn't shrink from it. There was a strange comfort in invisibility once you stopped needing to be seen. Natalie went home, unpacked the untouched gifts, and placed them in a donation bin. All but 2. One she mailed to Cassie. The other she dropped off at Liam's office with a sticky note, "You're still the better man." As for the third one, Mark's, she left it on his porch with a bottle of bourbon and a card that simply read, "Some things age well, like your kindness." She didn't want thanks, she wanted release. People think revenge is loud, explosive, a final act of fury. But the most devastating revenge is peace. When they expect you to crawl and instead you walk away, not in rage, but in absolute irrevocable disinterest. That night she cooked herself dinner for one, lit a candle, played Billie Holiday on vinyl, and toasted to the woman who finally realized she didn't need to be chosen to be whole. You ever tasted freedom after years of bending? It's not sweet, it's bitter, but it's clean. And it burns just enough to remind you you're alive. The phone remained silent. She left it that way. A week passed, then 2. Life resumed its shape, but something fundamental had shifted inside her. It was like walking through her apartment with the lights finally on. Everything that used to feel familiar, the framed family photos, the heirloom dishes in the cabinet, the dusty piano in the corner, suddenly looked staged, like a set built for a play she no longer wanted to star in. The photos came down first. She didn't throw them away. She wasn't spiteful. She simply removed them from the walls, slid them into a box, and labeled it history, because that's what it was now. She thought someone might reach out. An aunt, her cousin, even her mother. But silence, when cultivated over years, becomes a language, and they had all become fluent in speaking without speaking. Passive cruelty dressed as oblivion. You know the type? The mother who claims, "I didn't know you weren't coming," as if her calendar wasn't planned 3 months in advance. The sister-in-law who swears it was a misunderstanding while side-eyeing her like a threat. The brother who says nothing because loyalty has a price, and he sold his for acceptance. Natalie had lived among shadows long enough to recognize projection. She was too independent, they once said, too private, too hard to read. But what they meant was, she didn't perform the role they needed her to play. She didn't beg, she didn't cling, she didn't compete. So they rewrote the script, erased her from it. But let me tell you something. The moment a woman stops asking for a seat at the table is the moment she builds her own. And Natalie's table was getting bigger. It started small. Coffee with Cassie turned into a weekly ritual. Long walks, honest talks, laughter that didn't ask her to minimize herself. Cassie wasn't trying to be her friend out of pity. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She just showed up. And sometimes that's everything. Liam invited her to his gallery opening in February. She wore red. She never wore red. The moment she walked in, heads turned, not because she looked stunning, though she did, but because she carried something rare self-possession. No makeup could replicate it. No dress could fake it. It was the look of someone who had been through the fire and didn't flinch anymore. Liam pulled her into a long hug. "I'm glad you came." "I almost didn't," she admitted. "Why?" "Because they made me feel like I didn't belong anywhere." He looked her in the eye. "Natalie, you were never the one who didn't belong. You were just the only one who wasn't lying." That stayed with her. For weeks. She wrote it down in her journal. Not as a quote, but as a truth she needed to rewire into her bones. The only one who wasn't lying. Funny how people resent the mirror more than the monster. She had held up a mirror too many times, asked questions no one wanted to answer, dared to suggest the family wasn't as perfect as it pretended to be, so they labeled her the difficult one, the problem, the shadow. But the thing about shadows, they only exist when there's light. One evening in March, her mother finally called. Unknown number, straight to voicemail. Natalie played it twice. "Hi, sweetheart. I just wanted to check in. We missed you over the holidays. Not sure what happened, but call me when you can. Love you." It was soaked in sweet vagueness. Not a single admission, not a single apology. Natalie stared at the wall for a long time after. Do you know what it takes for a mother to erase a daughter's presence with a smile? Do you know what it takes for that daughter to smile anyway? She didn't call back. Instead, she stood up, poured herself a glass of wine, and walked out onto her balcony. The city was quiet, gentle, forgiving. She felt it then, not a surge, not a burst, just a quiet rise of certainty. This was her life, and she was finally the one choosing who got to be in it. Spring bled into early summer, and Natalie no longer flinched when she passed the bakery where her family used to gather after Sunday service. She didn't avoid the neighborhood park where her niece had once taken her first wobbly steps. These places no longer held her hostage. Memory had lost its teeth. She hadn't just cut the cord, she'd cauterized it. You might think that kind of detachment feels cold, but it doesn't. It's warm, like stepping out of a too tight dress and realizing you can breathe again. She no longer replayed the Christmas silence like a crime scene. There was no more evidence to sort, no faces to study, no motive to uncover. They had made their choice. So had she. Still, the past has a way of knocking, just when you forget it ever had a key. The family reunion was in June. She found out through a neighbor, Mrs. Kellerman, who'd lived next door to her mother for 30 years and still called Natalie darling girl. "You going to the lake this weekend? I saw your brother unloading chairs." Natalie blinked. "Lake. Oh, didn't you hear your mom's hosting the family reunion? First time since the pandemic. Big deal." Of course she hadn't heard. She smiled politely and changed the subject. But something inside her stirred, not bitterness, not quite, more like curiosity. She went home, opened her laptop, and clicked through social media like a stranger in her own lineage. There it was again, her family laughing beneath paper lanterns, plates full of ribs and potato salad, and those godforsaken matching shirts. Same couch, same smiles, same vacant space where she once belonged. But this time it didn't cut. It itched like the edge of a scar that no longer needed to heal, but still reminded her that she'd once bled. Natalie didn't cry. She got dressed. Not for the lake, not for them. For herself. A gallery downtown was showing a local artist's work, a woman who painted fractured families with violent brushstrokes and colors so bold they almost screamed. Natalie walked through the exhibit like a ghost, unlearning its old haunts. One canvas stopped her cold. It was just a chair, an empty chair, lit from above, cast in hues of gold and rust and longing. Its plaque read, "The Uninvited Guest." She stared at it for a long time. Then she did something she hadn't done in over a year. She smiled at a stranger. A man beside her had been admiring the same piece. He looked over, said, "It's haunting, isn't it?" Natalie nodded. "It's familiar. You ever been the uninvited one?" She met his gaze and replied once, but never again. They talked. His name was Jude. He taught literature at the university. Divorced, no kids, kind eyes. He didn't ask her what happened with her family. She didn't volunteer. Sometimes the most healing thing is to be with someone who doesn't see you as a broken narrative, but as a blank page. They got coffee, then dinner, then silence comfortable, not heavy. Natalie didn't think about her mother, or the reunion, or what stories were being told about her absence. She thought about the way Jude listened, the way she laughed when she wasn't worried about shrinking herself, the way it felt to be wanted, without obligation. Weeks passed. By July, the gallery had offered Natalie a position managing exhibits. She'd mentioned once half-heartedly that she'd minored in art history. Cassie had secretly emailed her resume. "You needed a push," she said, "and I know talent when I see it." Natalie cried then, not because she was sad, because someone had chosen her without expecting anything in return. You ever felt that? Not conditional love, not obligation masked as affection, but genuine quiet regard. She spent her birthday that month with Cassie, Jude, Liam, and Mark, yes, Mark, who had turned out to be an incredible cook and the de facto host of their small found family gatherings. They grilled skewers on his rooftop, watched fireworks, and sang terribly off-key. No matching shirts. No passive aggression. No roles to perform. Just real people. You might be wondering, did the family ever reach out again? They did. A mass text for Thanksgiving. Another voicemail on a Mother's Day. But Natalie never answered, because by then she had finally realized some people only remember you when they need to feel innocent. But Natalie wasn't a witness anymore. She was the author now. It was December again, 1 year later. The air bit the same way it had the year before. Same frost, same carols in every shop, same dizzying whirl of red and gold and green everywhere she turned. But Natalie wasn't the same. She stood at her window the morning of Christmas Eve, sipping cinnamon coffee and watching the city below pulse with early shoppers and late regret. The apartment was calm. The tree she decorated with Cassie glowed in the corner, not perfect, but honest. No theme, no forced traditions, just ornaments that meant something. She hadn't bought gifts for her family this year, hadn't even thought to. You know how strange it feels to no longer crave the approval that used to define you. It's like stepping out of a fog and realizing you were the storm all along. There was a knock at the door just after noon. She knew the rhythm before she even opened it. Her mother, hair curled, makeup done, wrapped in a coat too fancy for the weather. Natalie didn't say anything, just looked at her. "I was in the neighborhood," her mother said a little too brightly. Natalie stepped aside wordlessly. They sat at the kitchen table. No music, no candles. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of years pressing between them. "I owe you an apology," her mother began. "I didn't know the others were planning things without you. I wasn't part of that." Natalie tilted her head. "You hosted the dinner." A pause. "Yes, and the reunion." Her mother's eyes wavered. "It wasn't meant to hurt you." But it did. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was surgical, precise. A moment that asked, what do you do when the people who raised you don't recognize what they broke? Her mother looked older somehow. Not frail, but tired in a way that came from years of emotional evasiveness. "I miss you," she whispered. Natalie inhaled slowly, then asked a question she had never dared ask before. "What part of me do you miss?" Her mother blinked. I don't understand. Do you miss the version of me who didn't challenge anyone, who made everything okay, who swallowed things whole and never said a word?" Tears welled in her mother's eyes. "I miss my daughter." Natalie smiled gently. "I'm still here, but I'm not yours in the same way anymore." And that's the truth, isn't it? Some ties don't break. They stretch, snap, then regrow into something unrecognizable. Her mother didn't beg, didn't plead. She simply stood, placed a small gift box on the table, and said, "If you ever want to come home." Natalie looked her straight in the eye. "I have a home." And she meant it. After the door closed, she sat with the box for a long time before finally opening it. Inside was a photo. Natalie, age 9, standing between her parents, grinning and gap-toothed in a blue velvet dress. On the back, her mother had written, "You were always the light, even when we didn't see it." Natalie didn't cry. She placed the photo on her shelf beside a new one, a Polaroid from last week's dinner with Cassie and Jude and Liam and Mark, everyone mid-laugh. No poses, no pretense. That night she hosted Christmas, just her people, the ones who had chosen her without conditions, the ones who saw her not as a role but as a person. There was laughter. There was music. There was peace, not the kind that's silent, the kind that roars from the inside out. Natalie stood at the head of the table, wine in hand, as the others chatted around her. And for a moment she let it all in. The pain, the loss, the becoming. Because true power doesn't come from revenge. It comes from release.